does not just exist. A republic is an ongoing, ongoing concern. It's a duty. A republic is a duty upon us. And if you read our constitution, as well Article 3, Clause 1, it's a call to duty. If you listen to our national anthem, it's a call to duty. So in the words of Benjamin Franklin, all Kenyans are called to keep this country a republic. And a republic, we must keep it. And among keeping this country a republic is the call by Senator Sige that all Kenyans must be carried on board. Nobody should be left behind. Nobody should fall through the cracks. So we are going to make this law to ensure that all Kenyans enjoy the promise of the republic, and we keep Kenya a republic, and a republic being a government of law, not a government of men, a government of law, where all are subject to the law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I like when you smile at me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Omtata. Senator Ali Roba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this bill by Senator Sige, and I would like to start with something that should really touch all of us. In my role of leadership at the county government level, I've witnessed a lot of realities of life. The line between ability and disability is very thin. Senator Lekina can be very healthy, perfectly, in shape this minute. And after a few minutes, he ceases to be on the basis of other conditions God sent in terms of sickness or accident that is likely to happen to any one of us. What Senator Sige is trying to do is to really persuade the Senate to rise to the occasion as the leaders of today for the generations of today and tomorrow, by making sure we legislate knowing very well what we are legislating can easily be for your children and the children of your children. The opportunity you have today as a senator seated in this house with the capacity and the legal mandate to legislate, you may not have it tomorrow because you will not be probably in this house as a legislature to be able to take this advantage of such opportunity. What Senator Sige is trying to do is, sensitize the Senate and the legislature as a whole to be able to understand there is critical mass, and they are critical because when we undertook audit of persons living with disability in Mandera County, we were shocked. And the number of persons with disability that are hidden within communities and homes because of the stigma or the inability to be able to provide for them properly is alarming. And not only this, we should feel challenged by Senator Sige's proposal to be able to extend this proposal to require the National Public Service Commission and county public service boards to be able to make deliberate considerations in terms of even employment and by reserving positions, particularly for persons living with disability in this country. This reality should inform all of us. Recently, a member of my committee, Senator Eddie Okech, one morning he was very healthy. He went to play soccer, and for 2 months he was in crutches. He cannot move. These are the realities that need to inform us. Today you are well, tomorrow you are not. And Senator Sige, I wish to congratulate you and challenge you further, because sometimes the wearer of the shoes knows where it pinches the most. It is you to sensitize this Senate and to initiate banking on the Senate 100% support, that we are going to stand with you, stand by you, to make sure that the laws that favor persons disadvantaged in whichever way are going to get remedies through legislation that forces the government and managers, not only the national government, the county government, but also parastatals, companies. We need to pass legislations that are going to compel private entities to be able to conform to certain norms prescribed in law, that should they advertise X number of positions, they need to reserve certain number for persons who are disadvantaged in society, and particularly persons living with disability. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support. Thank you.
Senator Ole Kina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying that I support the amendment to the elections, the county government elections laws, amendment bill of 2024 by Senator Sigi. Mr. Speaker, being included in any society should be our main principle in this House, should be what we advocate for. I just got back from Wajir County, and Wajir County is one of the most progressive counties in this country. It's got billionaires. The residents of Wajir County own their own aircrafts that flies daily. There are 2 flights daily to Wajir County. But because of being excluded from the national grid, that county is not able to achieve the same potentials of a county like Nairobi. Marsabit County suffers the same consequences. Mandera County suffers the same consequences. So today when I'm seated here and I'm trying to absorb the submissions by my sister, Senator Sigi, I'm beginning to really appreciate the fact that it is only her who can be able to give us real insights on what people with disability can be able to help this country, on the experiences, the challenges that they go through when it comes to issues of policy making. Yes, the Constitution is there. And in fact, if you read the object, a memorandum of her bill, it talks clearly that the purpose of this bill is to be able to achieve the requirements under Article 54(2) of the Constitution, that at least 5% of the members of the County Assembly are persons with disabilities. This is a progressive implementation tool that now Senator Sigi wants us to be cognizant of its benefits and what it can do for future generations. It is imperative that we become realistic. I was seated here and Senator Eddie came and said to me something which I've been agonizing on, and said this is an interesting bill. Because what if, hypothetically, one day everyone who is elected in office from a particular county, as the assembly, is disabled? Then what does the law say in regards to other people who are able? And that, when I read the Constitution, I started laughing and smiling to the drafters of the Constitution, because they had seen what Senator Eddie have seen. So this is a matter of being progressive. Slowly by slowly, for us to be able to achieve for future generations. IEBC have attempted to do this, but they have not been able to do that because of lobbying. Every single day someone goes and lobby, and before you realize, someone who has been brought here cannot even be able to advocate for any person who is disabled. So I think it is imperative, as we are contributing to this bill, we see how far we can be able to go in defining what disability is all about. My brother, Senator Okiya Omtata, was arguing that he's also disabled because, for one reason or another, he's not able to chew bones. Maybe he's right. What I saw lacking in this bill, and I kept on asking myself, is that since this bill is essentially for advocating for inclusion of people with disability, in elected positions. What about people who are dyslexic? Are those people who are dyslexics also considered as disabled? Do we only consider people who are physically? Or do we consider people who cannot hear? Or do we have to extend this issue of disability to be able to define? And how pragmatic can we be to ensure that we actually achieve what the Constitution has set out? So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, I want to challenge my sister to be able to further define disability when it comes to this country. Because if you go to most counties, buildings are erected. Maybe we might have an expert in Nairobi who can be able to come and say, before you build this building or before you give out permits or approvals for building, make sure that building can be accessed by someone who is physically challenged. I actually don't like using the words disabled. I like using the word challenge, because I've seen people who are considered by the society as being disabled, and they are much capable of doing more things that most of us are not able to do. They can reason out. Some of us who are 100% cannot even reason. So, Mr. Speaker, as I support this bill, I'd like to be a bit realistic as well. We're in a society which we talk too much, but we do nothing. How realistic are we going to be to ensure that at least we can achieve the 5% of all the elected members of a county assembly being members who are physically or people who are disabled? I've looked at Section 8, the proposed amendment of this, where it says, for the purpose of subsection 1F3, the Commission shall draw from the list such members of special seats members in the order given by the party. In the order given by the party. That's the one word that I'd like to highlight. Necessary to ensure that at least 5% of the members of the county assembly are persons with disability. I'd like to persuade my sister to change that so that we make it mandatory. Because the mischief that you are tending to cure cannot be cured with such language. Because people there will still choose whoever they want to choose. So I think it is imperative that you expand that provision further to be able to be descriptive in nature, to say this and this person ought to be the one given priority. I'm sure my brother, Senator Sifuna, who is the SG of the ODM party, can be able to attest to what I'm saying and can speak directly on these issues, because those are the challenges we face. Today, when we don't have an IEBC, there are people who are appointed and then reappointed. They're no longer in parliament. So IEBC will just go back to the list. What will happen if at all maybe in the National Assembly there's a person who is supposed to replace Mbadi? Can this bill help IEBC be able to choose the right person, or will it be an issue of lobbying? Senator Ledama will be lobbying for his brother or sister to be appointed. So I think we need to be descriptive in nature. So my sister, I would like to suggest that you'd relook at Section 8 so that we avoid that mischief. Finally, I want to reiterate on the importance of you redefining the categories of disability. I think you need to be elaborate so that we don't only look at people with physical, hearing, and visual impairments. I want us to look at other people who are also challenged, who are dyslexic. You know, there are people who are extremely intelligent. All of us, one way or the other, have some form of dyslexia in us. what measure do we use so that we also include those people? Because they're the only ones who can be able to explain the challenges they go through. And I'll try to demonstrate. There are people, when they read, Mr. Speaker, and they're reading, you'll find them reading on a zigzag line. That is a form of dyslexia. I'm sure majority weep. I don't know how much he knows about dyslexia because of being a medical doctor. But I can attest that for my own family, I've got people who are challenged that. And they read. They could say two nominated, and then they go straight to marginalized. They don't read. Like if you have this bill and you go to section 3 of the bill, they would say section 3.1, they will read the members of a county assembly contemplated under Article 177C, and then they will go to C because their mind has told them rush to C. So we need to be able to be descriptive in nature so that those people are also not left out and they're included. Mr. Speaker, as I summarize, that people with disabilities go through. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Buni Kawale.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this chance, and Mr. Speaker, allow me to congratulate the nominated Senator, Crystal Asige, for this a piece of work. Senator Asige, I want to acknowledge her for her hard work. And I want to acknowledge her even more for her demonstration for the indomitable spirit of a human being. Madam Speaker, as a medical expert, I can confirmly say that disability is poorly documented in this country. It is grossly misunderstood and grossly underreported, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, quickly when you tell the politicians who then give an opportunity to people living with disability to come to these houses and our county assemblies, they just look at loss of limbs, loss of eyesight, loss of hearing, and probably stop there. But we have a greater population of people living with disabilities that are unable to come out and talk about. Let me give you an example. The issue of infertility in women. There are many women who have serious problem of infertility, and there is no greater infertility in a woman. I mean, there is no greater disability in a woman than infertility. Every woman would want to be called mama. So these women who do not have the physical opportunity to get a child are women living with disability. And so that women don't think that I misunderstand human beings. We also have men with azoospermia. They also can't get children. If we document these things carefully, we can easily get a beautiful young woman here who has no visible physical disability, but she's living with infertility, and she would deserve to be nominated. Mr. Speaker, before I go to the real challenge of this bill, let me speak to my own experience. We have to be very careful when we are growing up children, when we are fellowshipping with society, so that we look at legislation to support people living with a disability to mean giving them an opportunity, but not to mean you are profiling them as people who are lesser human than the others. Why do I say this, Mr. Speaker? Is because The man who taught me mathematics, Mr. David Mugaisi Asuzi, was living with disability. And he taught me mathematics, and I want to thank him. May his soul rest in eternal peace. He helped me to get distinction 1 in mathematics, and helped me in that exam, Mr. Speaker, to get 100% in mathematics alternative A. Mr. Speaker, in my office in Kakamega, I have employed Ignatius. Ignatius is a one-legged youth, but I have never seen a greater bullfighter than that boy. He can go into what we call in bullfighting mongara. Mongara is the equivalent in rugby where you go in the most dangerous circle. Igna will go in and come out and go in and no injury in bullfighting. And yet the guy has got one leg and is a great bullfighter. Mr. Speaker, because of the challenges of politics, I was attacked by goons in my home. And they went for my son and gouged out his eye when he was 5 years old. Mr. Speaker, today that boy, we have grown him up so that he doesn't believe he's a lesser human being because he lost his one eye. But we told him that you can be what all other youths can be. And today, Mr. Speaker, the guy is a high-profile auditor employed by the national government of Kenya, in charge of one of the counties here in Kenya, and he even holds a master's in that profession. Mr. Speaker, now I want to plead with Senator Asige. Senator Asige, listen to your bill. You are saying you seek to amend Section 177C of the Constitution of Kenya, right? Yes, that is now where I'm going, and I want us to work together.
Senator Boni Khalwale.
Yes, I speak.
Should I remind you? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I'm inviting the senator to move with me that you want to amend Article 177 of the Constitution. It means you want to amend the Constitution of Kenya. The Constitution of Kenya, the process of amendment of the Constitution of Kenya is provided for in 255. It doesn't say you can amend the Constitution through amending an act of parliament. So why I'm bringing you to this is that in 255, sabbatical 2, they show you the areas which you can only amend through a referendum. And one of those areas, 255(2)(I), is the objects, principles, and structure of the devolved government. The devolved government is the county assembly and the executive. Those are the structure of the devolved government. So if you attempt to amend anything about the county assembly the way you are doing, you are amending the structure of the county assembly and therefore the county government. And this constitution in 255 says not the Senate, not the National Assembly, not Khalwale, not Asige can amend. To do that, you have to go back to Kenyans so that they say so through a referendum. What am I saying? I am saying that in the spirit of your amendment, you are more than 100% right, Senator. You want to give equal opportunity to all Kenyans, including those living with disabilities. You are right. But in the letter where you are attempting to amend the Constitution through an act of parliament, you cannot do it. We must do what you are doing, but take this proposal to Kenyans to vote and decide that they want to change 177 to now invite the
Senator,
amendment.
Senator Boni Khalwale.
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Boni Khalwale.
I'm back to you.
There is a point of order from Senator Moses Kajwang. What's your point of order?
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, ideally it ought to have been a point of information, but still,
No,
I want to inform Senator Boni Khalwale that Article 177(1)(c) envisages that there shall be an Act of Parliament that will define the number of members of marginalized groups, including persons with disabilities and the youth. And therefore, the intention of this amendment is to amend the Act of Parliament referred to under Article 177(1)(c), rather than amending Article 177(1)(c) itself. I thought that needed to be made clear, because even I was also a bit confused, because that proposal, that Article 177(1)(c) of the Constitution shall include, and then there's sub 1, 2, 3, ideally that should be sitting in the Act of Parliament. So it's an amendment to an Act of Parliament that is required under Article 177(1)(c). Initially, Mr. Speaker, I was convinced that this is an impossible amendment, but having read this, I think that Senator Asige just needs to clean up that amendment so that it does not look like we are amending the Constitution.
When I see and listen to this level of debate, seeing the contribution by Senator Asige and hearing the point of information from Senator Kajwang, is when I wish members of this Senate and the National Assembly would know that participating in parliamentary business does not end with questions, does not end with statements. Real business is what we are doing now. It is this kind of debate that makes you a legislator. And Senator Kajwang, that is why what I'm doing, I'm attempting to interpret the Constitution. And what you have done by informing me, you are interpreting the Constitution. Interpretation of the Constitution is so difficult that even two lawyers don't always agree. So what did the framers of the Constitution do? Because they knew the difficulty of interpretation of the Constitution, they said, yes, you can hold whatever opinion, but the final person to say you are right in your interpretation or you are wrong is only the High Court. So what I am saying is that Kajwang is just a matter of time. I was sounding to caution. You will find that we can allow such a good work by Senator Asige that will help my son and my other friends and their children and everybody. We can help her to kill it without sounding out what I am saying. So let's see, when we go to the committee of the whole, Asige, and you'll not die from it, consult experts, and I think I can fairly say that I'm an expert in legislation. I've been around for 20 years. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to give life to this. We want to do more. We want to remove the fate of people living with disability from the hands of political leaders. They get an opportunity because political leaders of political parties then give them some form of support. We should tweak the law so that the people living with disability can, for example, elect themselves. Yes, Asige, you can still win an election. You don't have to rely on the national party leader of the Orange Democratic Movement for you to come here. We can say that at this election, people living with disability will vote for themselves. So that the people living with disability who find their way in this house of privilege, the Senate is a house of high privilege. The National Assembly, the county assemblies are positions of high privilege. We cannot leave that in the hands of leaders of political parties. the people living with disability have the capacity to agree amongst themselves on a model of election, or we legislate a model of election that will be used with people living with disability. One of the reasons why I don't like the way we identify affirmative action women who come to the two houses is because of this same problem. Yes. Number two, the reason why I don't recognize the affirmative nature of the 47 county women in the National Assembly, it is because the wrong people vote for them. If we wanted women to elect a county MP to represent them, what business do men have in voting in that election? We should have, under this constitution, now that we have got benefit of hindsight, grafted the election laws so that on voting day, we men do not participate in electing the county MP. It be done by women. It is this thing that I want us to push through this so that we don't rush it. Senator Sige, don't forget you are my brother's daughter and I cannot harm your industry. That I want you to achieve more. Not so much because it is good, but also because you have proven that those of us who have been here for 20 years, we have been sleeping on the job. Why didn't we think innovatively the way you have done? With those many remarks, I support.
Senator Kajwang Moses.
Madams, Mr. Speaker, sir, I quickly corrected myself. Mr. Speaker, sir, and my speaker of choice, I rise to support the County Government's Election Laws Amendment Bill of 2024 that has been sponsored by Senator Crystal Asige. And Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very important amendment, and I hope that this House and the other House will see it fit to pass this because it seeks to clear some inconsistencies in law that have caused problems in the past. Mr. Speaker, Senator Sige has demonstrated exemplary industry, knowledge of legislative affairs, rare intellect, and Mr. Speaker, she has become an idol and of many people and a model of what a legislator should do through her diligence. And Mr. Speaker, we have even considered co-sponsoring the public participation bill together, but we have been delayed by the passage of the sessional paper on public participation. As you have seen, Mr. Speaker, almost every other process in this country has been held hostage by concerns of public participation. And I do hope that we'll be able to put our thoughts together because Senator Sige wanted to inject the disability aspect as far as public participation is concerned. Mr. Speaker, this amendment bill seeks to give effect to Article 177(1)(c) of the Constitution of Kenya. Article 177(1)(c) says that a county assembly shall consist of the number of members of marginalized groups, including persons with disabilities and the youth, prescribed by an Act of Parliament. The Act of Parliament that has made that prescription is not one, but two. The Elections Act, under Section 36(1)(f) and 36(8), has defined the number of members of county assembly to represent marginalized groups as 4. And the County Governments Act under Section 7(1)(a) has defined the number to be 6. And Mr. Speaker, the IEBC has decided to take the provisions of the Elections Act, and the IEBC has been implementing the 4 seats per county assembly rather than the 6 seats that has been prescribed under the County Governments Act. And when the County Governments Act was enacted, Mr. Speaker, it was hoped that this would be the Bible on matters to do with devolution. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the Devolution Committee, which has been doing a review of the County Governments Act, that it is time for a comprehensive assessment and review of that act, because we have seen a lot of scenarios that are avoidable but cannot be resolved because of the County Governments Act. There are small things, Mr. Speaker, like relationships between governors and their deputies. There are small things around county assemblies and the kind of powers they have, things like procedures for impeachment, small things like those. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage that this House goes for the upper threshold when it comes to representation of marginalized group and not the lower threshold as has been picked by the IEBC. Senator Ledama, while speaking to this matter, was wondering whether certain forms of inability are considered to be disability. Mr. Speaker, this is such a sensitive matter that it cannot be left to personal interpretation. And that is why the Ministry of Health in 2022 came up with the Disability Medical Assessment and Categorization Guidelines. And they are very, very clear on the types of disability that are recognized. They talk about physical impairment, vision impairment, hearing and speech impairment, mental health disorders, chronic progressive disorders, maxillofacial disabilities. They are all there, Mr. Speaker. And I was asking my sister, Senator Beatrice Ogola, because we have a mutual friend who used to be her member of County Assembly, and he's got a stuttering condition. And Mr. Speaker, in those guidelines, even stuttering is defined as speech impairment. So someone who stammers then is qualified for nomination as a representative of persons with disability. We looked at another example, Mr. Speaker, of a gentleman who was very famous where I come from, and he had a very mischievous name called Otieno Omande. Otieno Omande, Mr. Speaker, was proposed for nomination in the inaugural County Assembly of Homa Bay. Otieno Omande's disability was a hunchback. And
Senator Beatrice, what is your point of order?
I happen to know the gentleman being mentioned by my Senator Moses Kajwang, but I only thought it wise that Senator Kajwang goes ahead to explain to the House what the meaning of this second name is. It would be fair that he explains that to the House.
Mr. Speaker, Senator Beatrice has chosen not to divulge very important information, that this particular gentleman is her in-law, is her brother-in-law. And so in my culture, a brother-in-law, you might have a very personal relationship. So I think she's a conflicted, there's conflict of interest in that question. And furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the second name, Omande, if I was to describe it, I will fall into the trap of unparliamentary language. And so I am safer calling it in the Luo language. But Mr. Speaker, Otieno Omande was a very famous gentleman, a very famous Gor Mahia supporter. He was not of great height. He was of fairly short stature, and he had a hunchback. And Mr. Speaker, when Otieno Omande was proposed to be a member of the County Assembly to represent persons with disability, people went to court, and they decided, or they moved the court to declare that a hunchback was not a disability within the definition of the law. And Mr. Otieno Omande was struck off the list of potential members of County Assembly, and somebody else was put in his place. When Mr. Otieno Omande died not too long ago, many of us regretted because we thought that he would have represented the interests of persons with disability. But that was then, before the 2022 Disability Medical Assessment and Categorization Guidelines had been put forth. Mr. Speaker, we are all potential persons with disability, because even if you are born with both legs, You never know. With the Nairobi City County having gone on autopilot, you never know when you'll drop into a manhole in this city. You never know when you'll be knocked down by a motorbike. If you look at many of our hospitals, especially county hospitals, there's great pressure on those hospitals arising from accidents occasioned and caused by what we call boda riders. One day, someone is of good health and has all their faculties running. The next day, someone suffers physical impairment over situations that we have failed to manage. And Mr. Speaker, this issue of bodas and the accidents they cause and the inevitability of disability that many people face in this city and across many towns, it is a result of our low standards as a society. It is a result of mediocre thinking and planning on the part of leadership and the technocrats and the bureaucrats who are supposed to ensure that there is public safety in this republic. There are countries and capitals like Abidjan in Ivory Coast, Mr. Speaker. In Abidjan, you don't get motorbikes zooming and flying around in a dangerous manner. Mr. Speaker, Windhoek in Namibia, I was fortunate to be there for a climate conversation last week, Mr. Speaker. You don't find those dangerous contraptions. In our case, we have chosen to educate our sons and daughters and later on condemn them to a life riding on motorcycles and calling that true employment. And in the process, endangering the lives and the ability of many of us. And that is why I'm saying that all of us in this house must stand up to be ambassadors and spokespersons for inclusion of persons with disability, because nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, a census was carried out on disability in Kenya, and the findings are quite interesting. That out of our total population, 2.2% of the population suffer from one form of disability or another. The county that had the highest figures on disability was Embu at 4.4%, followed by my county, Mutembei, at 4.3%, followed by makwiny at 4.1%, followed by Siaya and Kisumu in that order. Mr. Speaker, sometimes when you look at these statistics of disability, there is Mr. Speaker, when you look at these statistics on disability, there is a direct proportion to the rate of neglect and marginalization of some of these counties. You can see counties like Mutembei, Siaya, Kisumu are in the leaders bracket. And then you find that perhaps even some of the counties with the highest instances or incidences of disability in Kenya also suffer a greater burden when it comes to other communicable and non-communicable diseases. That tells you that there's been neglect as a result of progressive or regressive policies of past governments that have led to greater instances of disability in those areas. And Mr. Speaker, one of the main causes of disability in the past used to be polio. But because of modern medication, the polio vaccine is now available. But again, due to lopsided government policies, where certain areas are left out, you still find that in some of these counties that I've mentioned, of Mutembei, makwiny, Siaya, and Kisumu, there's still a higher instance of polio infection. Mr. Speaker, the formula that has been proposed by Senator Asige requires that at least 5% of members of a county assembly are persons with disabilities. I support and I agree with that figure, because in Mutembei, the disability prevalence is 4.3%. But, Mr. Speaker, we must also ask ourselves that what then is the best ratio to impose in law? If the national disability incidence rate is at 2.2% of the population, is it fair to insist on a 5% representation of persons with disability in the county assembly? Or it would be reasonable to benchmark it with the national rate?
Senator Kajwang, do you want to be informed by Senator Asige?
I'll be glad to be informed.
Senator Asige?
Thank you so much. And I would never want to interrupt a fantastic flow of thought by the Senator for Mutembei. the only information I want to put forward for himself as well as the rest of the members is this 5% wasn't a number that I came to on my own or in consultation with the stakeholders, which is the county assemblies. Speaker, this 5% comes directly from the Constitution in Article 54, which says that every elective and appointive position in the country should be given to persons with disabilities at 5%, the rate of 5%. That is in Article 54 of the Constitution. And that is where I got the inspiration to add in this amendment, Speaker. So as Senator Kajwang continues his wonderful contribution, I just wanted him to be informed of that provision. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with Senator Sige that the Constitution under Article 54(2) says that the state shall ensure the progressive implementation of the principle that at least 5% of the members of the public in elective and appointive bodies are persons with disabilities. At least 5%. But you've got a 2.2% disability prevalence in the country. So there is what the Constitution aspires to, and there is the reality. Now, the problem then would be for you to fully realize or actualize Article 54(2), then you'll probably be having the same persons with disability sitting in various elective positions so that the number can get to 5%. Because you've got a 2.2% incidence, but the Constitution requires a 5% representation. I am well guided, Mr. Speaker. I think that it is a debate that we can have, whether it is something that has to be realized immediately or it's something that can be realized progressively. Mr. Speaker, I will conclude my contribution by encouraging Senator Sige to reach out to the other House and to ensure that she finds a co-sponsor for this bill so that it can move fast. And I do note, Mr. Speaker, that the requirement for representation of persons with disability in the National Assembly is contained, it's a constitutional provision, and so we should find friends in the other House who can fast-track this. Mr. Speaker, this is one of those bills that we don't really need to talk to too much. Even when we talk to it, we are just talking to the spirit of it so that we can encourage Senator Sige and commend her for the excellent work that she's doing. And at the end of the day, she's one of those senators who is doing that which brought her to this House, to represent the interest of marginalized groups, persons with disability, but she has gone beyond it. And Mr. Speaker, she has represented the youth very well, even though I'm not very sure whether she's still youth. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Cherargei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. From the onset, I want to commend Senator Crystal Asige. But on a lighter note, I saw Tim Mafisi saying that she's single in some social media over the weekend, which, Mr. Speaker, I saw it on the social. I said in a lighter note. I said on a lighter note.
Senator Asige, do you have a point of order?
It's a lighter note, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted under Standing Order 105, statement of fact. And the substantive speaker earlier in this session told us that matters with regard to social media have to really be taken carefully. So if he can substantiate, I don't know how he would do that without me being involved, but if he can, I would appreciate that substantiation, Speaker.
Senator Cherargei. Yes, Senator Kajwang, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is Senator Sige in order to close the market so soon?
Correct.
Because Senator Cherargei does not have to prove anything. Correct. In fact, that ambiguity should be strategic.
Yes.
It will bring about attention and it will give some of us hope it will give some of us hope. So, Mr. Speaker, it might not be very appropriate for Senator Cherargei to substantiate, so that we remain hopeful that we could fill that void in the life of the distinguished Senator.
Senator Kajwang, you are out of order. You are out of order, Senator Kajwang. Senator Asige herself is challenging Senator Cherargei to substantiate the statement he made about what he saw in our social media in terms of her status. So you can, if the opportunity is closed, are you asking Asige to reopen it right now? That's out of order, Senator Kajwang. Senator Cherargei, you are going to have to substantiate this matter.
Mr. Speaker, but yeah, I can be informed
by Senator Edik. What's your point of information?
Why am I not being given a mic? Or is it because I'm in the same category? But I also want to inform Senator Cherargei that this is not social media propaganda. This was in the social media page of US of the Honorable Senator Asige. This was our own social media page, and we saw it. It is a verified page. She knows she's a baddie. She knows that that's her own page. Unless she rejects that, is when Cherargei needs to substantiate. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Eddie, may I caution you again, yeah? You're talking about a page that Asige is asking for it to be substantiated. We have to move on. Senator Cherargei, you are going to have to substantiate this matter.
No, Mr.
Is Asige, what is the status of Asige?
But Mr. Speaker, I have received information and I appreciate. I just said Tim Mafisi said Senator Crystal Asige is single. And even the verified page that belongs to Senator Asige, can you protect me from Senator Karen Nyamu? I didn't see him in Dumberi when many songs were being sung. Mr. Speaker, what I can say, it was on a lighter note. But if I think Senator agrees, Senator Crystal. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I want to thank her and wish her well and encourage people like Senator Kajwang to pursue their thinking the way they have been saying. Mr. Speaker, secondly, as I support the county government bill, I want also over the weekend, I saw Senator Ledamo Lekina said that there is an intention to connect. Most of you are not frontier counties, and it is a privilege you are sitting as a speaker today. The counties of various like Mandera, Wajir, Mr. Speaker, and Marsabit to be connected to national grid to Kenya Power and Lighting. And I think that's a significant, and I want to thank Senator Ledama Olekina, who is our minority whip, and we support because we want access to power to be easier. The only part I don't support with him is when he becomes specific on the person who should do it, but I hope those are issues that can be resolved. Mr. Speaker, the county government amendment is a very direct, as my colleagues have said, under Article 54. In fact, sub-Article 2, the state shall ensure the progressive implementation of the principle of people living with disability, that at least 5% of the members of the public in elective and appointive bodies are persons with disabilities. So it is provided, Mr. Speaker, it is an affirmative direction that both elective and appointive, and I want to encourage Senator Crystal Asige next time, should also give us a status implementation report of the appointive of 5% within governments, the national government and the county governments, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't only talk about elective. The Constitution is very subjective, that it is not only elective, Mr. Speaker, or appointive. So we want to know whether even appointive positions meet the criteria of people living with disabilities, Mr. Speaker. And I think that is Article 54. Mr. Speaker, on Article 177 in terms of county assembly membership, I think this is a very straightforward matter, that at least 5%. It is disappointing that more than 20 counties are not meeting the threshold of PWDs and the young people, Mr. Speaker. The biggest challenge we have as a country as we talk today is the ballooning youth across the country. We need to hear their voices in county assemblies. We are lucky some of us were elected, we were still very youthful, even in this house, which was before referred to Nyumba ya Wazee, Mr. Speaker. But we are lucky to be sitting in this house to give voice to many of young people agenda. Even in the county assemblies, we want to see more young people running for elective, but also be given a chance through the appointive. I'm happy the Secretary General of ODM is in the house. We have the Deputy Party Leader. We have the Party Leader of UDM, Senator Roba. We have many people who run political parties in this house. That as they, and also live members of ODM, like Senator Beatrice Ogola. Mr. Speaker, we must come together, and I wish Secretary General of ODM was listening, because this is what I'm saying is very critical. That even as political parties through the Speaker, that you need to consider BWDs even when running during nominations. They should be given priority, Mr. Speaker, because of the unique nature that BWDs undergone, unlike the able-bodied people, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Senator Cherargei, would
I
you
think
like
for
to be
the first
informed?
time in the life of this house, I can allow today Senator Sifuna to inform me.
Senator Sifuna.
Honorable Speaker, I wanted to inform Senator Cherargei that in fact the mover of this bill is nominated by the Orange Democratic Movement, Honorable Speaker, to represent the persons with disabilities. And we as a party continue to be very proud of her. So I think, Honorable Speaker, Senator Cherargei, when he's addressing some of these issues, concerns about inclusion of persons with disabilities, maybe he should look behind his back and not this side, because on this side, we are okay, Honorable Speaker. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the SG Nairobi City Senator for that powerful and I want to commend the ODM also for nominating Senator Crystal Asige. I have taken judicial notice. I'm happy also on our side, Senator Mbukful. Comments has been very important going into the... And by the way, Senator Crystal Asige, she's also a very accomplished musician. And I was lucky with Senator Karen alongside. We did attend our launch, and it was very wonderful and beautiful. So the people living with disability can make a mark, Mr. Speaker. The third point I want to make is on the 5%. I think the young people, where 20 counties, they must be called out. I want to challenge the IEBC. I know IEBC is not fully constituted as at now, but we need to call out the IEBC. By the time they approve these nominations, without compliance of the Constitution, it is illegal, Mr. Speaker. When you see over 20 counties, that PWDs are not there, the young people, Mr. Speaker. Even I saw in Nyamira, they were also impeaching a youthful speaker, Mr. Speaker, the other day. We need to encourage young people to even to be the speakers of county assembly. But unfortunately, most of the governors, most of the senators, and even speakers, I have not seen PWDs being elected, Mr. Speaker. We need to change our value system as a country, that people living with disability, the marginalized, the minority, can lead this nation, Mr. Speaker. I remember when former President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, when he was being appointed as the vice president, he came from a minority community, but he went out to lead this nation for 24 years, Mr. Speaker. You have seen many people, even Professor Kithure Kindiki comes from a minority community. That is a challenge that as a nation, we must look beyond. I know, Mr. Speaker, where you come from, there is still a challenge about clanism, Mr. Speaker, where people look leadership in terms of numbers as opposed to competence. So as a country, we must look beyond the differently able people, that they can be leaders also. They can be governors, they can be ministers. They can. I remember there was a PS, Mr. Speaker, who delivered in the last parliament, Mugobe, or the PS with the stored diminutive stature, who was the PS, I think, in charge of education. She used to come from Western Mr. Even the late Professor Godia. Mr. Speaker, we must agree, and I'm happy in 2020, the Ministry of Health has defined on what disability means. And I want to ask Senator Crystal Asige to keep the fire burning and ensure that these interests are represented, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this one on the youth, I think young people also have a chance. You saw the explosion of Gen Z protests the other day, Mr. Speaker. This is because they feel unrepresented. Most of the young people feel that they are not represented. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to challenge them also to run for these positions. You cannot be saying we are not represented when you have not tried. Some of us, when we came here, we were very, very young, but we dared to try. So I want to challenge, Mr. Speaker, that young people, wherever it is not enough to just say we are not represented. Can you go out and register and become voters and run for those positions? All these political parties are willing to incorporate young people to learn for these elective posts, including people living with disability, minorities and marginalized, Mr. Speaker. So I want to challenge the young people. Apart from making their voices being heard outside there, they have a chance to be elected. You need to convince to sell your manifesto, Mr. Speaker. Even I want to say in conclusion, the resolution we just made the other day, it is because of that motion that we did contribute today, Mr. Speaker, that most of the young people, as we talk today, they went into Gen Z protests, Mr. Speaker. It's because they felt that they were representations. But I was sad that there is allegations of still abductions, there is still allegations of extrajudicial killings, and most of the victims are young people. Some of them, Mr. Speaker, I heard Senator Kajwang say here, you can be born as able person. In the last session, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, and we served with your father, the distinguished Senator Haji Senior, I was temporarily disabled. So the issue of disability, Mr. Speaker, I was only disabled in terms of my limbs, not any other thing was disabled, Mr. Speaker. But there was a challenge. I realized, Mr. Speaker, that you can be disabled. It is not, you have had even accidents happen, Mr. Speaker. Anything can happen, Mr. Speaker. If Senator Crystal Asige will tell you her story, everybody as a Kenyan has encountered. So even what we are seeing, people who are maimed because of Gen Z protests, there is abductions, there are allegations of abductions, there is people being followed. I saw it the other day that there is a young man who is not able to afford to pay for surgery, Mr. Speaker. I saw it today in the news, Mr. Speaker, and even I'm disappointed that the allegations that Safaricom is sharing triangulation coordinates for the police and DCI to arrest Kenyans, Mr. Speaker, that is infringing right of privacy. And I want to agree with you, Speaker, that the Committee of National Security should invite the Inspector General of Police. Why would you share the location and even the SMS and where the coordinates of the person of a Kenyan is? That is infringing right to privacy. And to do that, Mr. Speaker, you must get a court order. So if what I saw in Nation newspaper today is very unfortunate, even data protection, Mr. Speaker, I have been a victim for the last 1 week. My phone has been called, I have received insults, I have received praises. As we talk today, my phone, Mr. Speaker, has over 12,000 messages, SMSs. I have close to 20,000 WhatsApp, Mr. Speaker. I have received so many phone calls, and there is a data privacy breach that no one is addressing, Mr. Speaker. And they are salamiering me. By the way, I want to report to the House on all those, even the email of Senate is approaching 500,000 email that reacted to my bill, Mr. Speaker. And Kenyans are 60-40. As at now, 60% of Kenyans are supporting my bill, 40% are opposing. As the usual triangulations, Mr. Speaker, in terms of SMSs, in terms of WhatsApp, in terms of even Facebook update and social media, both in X account, Mr. Speaker. So I want to agree with Senator Crystal that the issue of data privacy should be protected. Why would a police know that I slept in somewhere and come and arrest and abduct me, Mr. Speaker? The Inspector General of Police must be called, Mr. Speaker, to order, and Safaricom also must be called to order. The fact that they have privilege of our data should not be allowed to abuse. Even Kenya Power and Lighting, Mr. Speaker, why are they sharing the data of where you live and the payments you have made in your houses? We must, and I want to challenge the national security. There is vice chairperson of national security here that should be, yes? Yes, Senator Otsotsi can inform me.
Okay, Senator Otsotsi.
Mr. Speaker, I want to inform my neighbor and my good friend Cherigei that we are having challenges with the exposure of private data because of the inefficiency of the Office of the Data Protection Commission, which the ICTD committee has brought a number of statements here on that matter. So I think for us to make progress on the issue of privacy of data, we need to start dealing with this office called the Office of Data Protection Commission.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, as I celebrate this tremendous work by Senator Crystal Asige, Mr. Speaker, is to agree as members of ICT we should take it as a priority, but also to encourage members, Mr. Speaker, the way we are giving accolades to Senator Crystal Asige, we should also give accolades to Senator Cherargei. Mr. Speaker, I've seen my colleagues bashing me in funerals and birthday party and baby showers over my proposals in the House. I want to appeal for love also, Mr. Speaker. I'm also a human being, Mr. Speaker, so you should not be hard on me. Can you be just be whispering some of this Solomonic wisdom when need arises? Mr. Speaker, with those very many remarks, I beg to support this bill and see it to fruition. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mogeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish Senator Cherargei had consulted seniors in the House before he came up with his proposed bill on extension of term limit. My advice is, Mr. Speaker, that till we vote on that bill, keep house. There are some areas we should not visit. Mr. Speaker, I first want to pass my congratulations to Senator Asige for this bill that has been sponsored by her, that is addressing some of the concerns in Article 177 of our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, let me be on record by saying that it has been a joy to serve in this House with Senator Asige. What a brilliant mind. Every time Senator Asige makes contributions on this floor, Mr. Speaker, I normally revisit the videos just to listen to her wisdom. You are such a blessing to this House, Mr. Speaker. She is such a blessing to this House. And I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that Senator Asige will do both in contribution and on the bills that you bring to the floor of the House. I hope the people of Mombasa will think seriously. If you ever offer yourself to seek an elective seat, they should consider electing you almost unopposed. She's done so well, Mr. Speaker. When you go up country, there are many people who stop you and they say, by the way, when you go back to Nairobi, pass our greetings to Senator Asige. So receive greetings from many of my constituents in Nyamira who are extremely impressed with the good work you're doing. Mr. Speaker, this bill is very timely. Mr. Speaker, if there is an article that has been abused by IEBC, then it is this Article 177. The only guiding law that we have had over the years are the regulations that were enacted by IEBC. And Mr. Speaker, the provision in this article that the number of special seats should ensure that not more than 2/3 of membership of the assembly are of the same gender has resulted in an abuse, serious abuse. If you go to my county of Nyamira, Mr. Speaker, we elect 20 MCAs. Then IBC nominates another 15, giving us 35 MCAs. I don't know how they read this article, Mr. Speaker, because it makes nonsense the idea of people electing or picking their leaders through a popular vote. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you have 20 MCAs and then you have 15 nominated, it means you have turned it around to say you will nominate 2/3 of elected members of county assembly. It's not more than 2/3. It's that you are picking another 2/3 to constitute members of county assembly. I've never understood it. I raised that issue before the floor of this House. In the last parliament, we had 16. This particular session, my assembly has 15 nominated MCAs. I mean, it cannot be, Mr. Speaker. Because if you're talking about not more than 2/3, at least we should not have more than 8 nominated MCAs. Because it's expensive to maintain a member of county assembly. They get their mortgages, they get their car grants, they have allowances, salaries. When you make the number too bloated, Mr. Speaker,
it becomes a threat to fruits of devolution, because we spend most of the money that we get to maintain our MCS. I hope, Mr. Speaker, when IBC is constituted and when this bill is enacted, because I'll be proposing a number of amendments, Senator Sige, to this bill, so that we make it also very clear that the number should not exceed a third of the elected MCS. So that, Mr. Speaker, am I making, yes, so that, Mr. Speaker, we don't make it a blank check for IBC to pick their friends. I hear, I'm not saying I have any proof, but I hear rumors that there are people who have now become experts. They carry money. After an election is declared, they find their way into the list. How can it be that even parties that only had one member of county assembly elected, just one member, they still end up with another member being nominated to the county assembly? So I hope that we can ride on this bill that has been sponsored by Senator Asige to clean up the procedures of nominating members to the county assembly. Two, there is no better way of re-emphasizing the role that our youths play in our politics. The youths are really our future leaders, and we must affirm them, we must support them. They are our children, they are our brothers, they are our sisters. We must hold them their hands and walk with them to the future. And Mr. Speaker, there are many people, even out there, who became elected leaders at a very early age, and they proved themselves and performed very well. Lyndon Johnson was the first guy to break the ceiling in the Senate by becoming majority leader without being a ranking member within the Senate. So we can have youthful leaders who can make very good contribution to the country. So it's good, Mr. Speaker, to note that if this bill is passed, and I hope it will, we'll have two candidates reserved for the youth. That's commendable. So that we know that each county assembly will have two youths, minimum, two youths. Others can also vie and win. And then, of course, marginalized groups. Every county has marginalized groups. Even in Nyamira, I have about 3 polling stations inhabited by my neighbors, the Luos, who are marginalized. But they have never been lucky to get a nominee MCA to the county assembly, despite them being clearly marginalized. They have never been lucky to have one of their own being nominated to the county assembly. So I fully support the idea of also picking the marginalized. For the first time ever, Mr. Speaker, I had an opportunity of visiting Lodwar. I've never been to Lodwar, Mr. Speaker, and when I saw the harsh weather conditions in Lodwar, Mr. Speaker, I will never at any one time oppose anybody who comes up with a policy to support the marginalized or those who come from hardship areas. The temperatures were 35 degrees centigrade. I didn't see any green vegetation within Lodwar. And then I just remembered that there are people who are proponents of 1 man, 1 shilling, who want to take away the little that people of northern Kenya frontier are getting. We can never be such inhumane in our approach, Mr. Speaker. So marginalized groups, people are marginalized in one way or another, ought to be supported affirmatively through legislations like what we have before us. And Mr. Speaker, while on it, let's build a country that respects the rule of law. People who are suspected to have committed any crime should be arrested by police officers who must identify themselves to those suspects and be taken to court. I don't support at all, Mr. Speaker, this culture of abducting people. I don't support it. As a lawyer, I believe strongly, Mr. Speaker, that the best way to build a country that have people who respect the law and who don't want to break the law is by applying the law fairly to everybody. Mr. Speaker, we are human beings. I was watching news yesterday, the young children of, I think it's called Boniface Mwangi. I mean, what are those children thinking of their country, Mr. Speaker? What is the spouse of Mr. Mwangi thinking of our own country, Mr. Speaker? I understand there is another activist called Aoko who has been missing since last week. That should not be allowed to happen, Mr. Speaker. Our security bodies, DCI, National Police Service Commission, should ensure that if somebody has been arrested, they know what the Bill of Rights says. They should be presented before any court of law within 24 hours. They should inform their families. Those suspects have a right to contact their lawyers, Mr. Speaker. Today, it would be Mwangi. Today, it will be Aoko. But if we allow it to become culture, Madam Speaker, you will be the next one. And I will also be the next one. Let's not cheat ourselves, Mr. Speaker, that because we are honorable members of Senate or members of National Assembly, the misuse of police power cannot be meted on us. It can be. If it's, the Swahili say, ukiona cha mwenzako chanyolewa, chako kufanya nini? Kitie maji. We'll be the next victims. We must call out the police, Mr. Speaker, and tell them to stop bringing this country to shame. If we continue this way, Mr. Speaker, you will find us being discussed adversely in international forums, Mr. Speaker. And we are a country that has passed a very progressive constitution, Mr. Speaker. You midwifed, Madam Speaker, this constitution. The implementation, you midwifed the implementation of this constitution, Mr. Speaker. So we must remind the police, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, that this constitution that has a very progressive Bill of Rights should be respected by everybody. Me, as a senator, the police officer, a cabinet secretary, and anybody else. Madam Speaker, I'm looking for an opportunity when we will bring the Inspector General of Police and DCI to the floor of this house so that he can explain to us whether that will be the norm. Then we will know that our police officers cannot guarantee the security of Kenyans, Madam Speaker.
KDIC, safer, stronger together.
Lakini wewe ni nani?
Sikia hoteli ya Vuma kweli na nini kipi? Hauna habari? Ona hiyo hoteli siku hizi iko na bonge la toto. Mtoto mrembo ajabu mwanangu.
Mbona kamfukuza Jasiri? Ana roho mbaya hata simpendi.
Kuna habari zimeenea. Kuna binti mrembo anatembea kisiwa cha Funzi.
Sasa mimi ni usuna nini?
I feel like there's someone else taking over my heart.
He has changed into someone different. Doesn't he seem a bit more rebellious? Your sons are adults. You don't get to control their lives. How is it that you're the only one she can't manipulate without getting angry?
I think that my mother has given up. I made that decision! Isabel had nothing to do with it at all! So stop sticking your nose into my life! I am telling you, once and for all!
What's going on?
She cannot influence my sons against me.
estaré contigo